Before we begin our story, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more, and drop a comment with your feedback on our stories. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The twin sons of Varkar Prime cast long deadly shadows over the brutal training pits where warriors honed their skills beneath the ever-watchful eyes of their rulers. Zalvok, a proud warrior marked by a legacy of conquest, knelt in the cooling basalt. He wiped the blood, his own and that of his opponent, from his snout with a rough forearm. The air tasted of ozone and scorched metal. Even the ground carried its battle scars. Above him, colossal orbital forges clanged and hummed relentlessly, infusing the atmosphere with an eerie metallic resonance. Across the pit, his opponent, Vethrok of the Iron Claw brood, circled with the lithe grace of a sand panther. Every slash of his tail was deliberate, a dance of deadly intent. As Vethrok's bioluminescent dorsal spines flared, his voice dripped venom. "You fight like a Kreshling," he sneered, the hissing tones slicing through the charged air. The ceremonial scars along his arms pulsed with a faint, dangerous light, a legacy inherited from a brood steeped in the traditions of the First Conquest. Zalvok's copper-scaled hide bore the marks of previous encounters, a deep gash carved across his shoulder plates and a fractured ridge above his left eye. The ceremonial bands around his forearms, signifying his status as heir to the high command brood, felt exceptionally heavy today. They were a constant reminder of his father's enormous expectations and a legacy built in blood and thunder. A booming voice, harsh and commanding, cut through the din. "Focus, whelp. A distracted warrior is a dead warrior." It belonged to High General Exorvok, whose crimson armor and grim trophies, the skulls of 100 conquered species, dominated the observation balcony above the pit. Each trophy bore a story: the crushing of the Centauri Rebellion, the merciless Arcturus campaign, the subjugation of the Kelthari spiritual worlds. In every conquest, Exorvok had carved his empire deeper into the annals of power. Zalvok's heart pounded as he gripped his training glaive tighter. Memories of his childhood training sessions, when he had idolized his father and sworn an oath to greatness, clashed with the gnawing doubts that had begun to infect him in recent cycles. His mind flickered to Zethvar, his clutch brother from the academy. Zethvar was one of the few whose eyes held genuine concern for Zalvok, a silent understanding that he bore the crushing weight of destiny. Then, as if on cue, the martial horn sounded. Vethrok launched himself like a bolt of lightning. His tail whipped viciously, striking Zalvok across the face. The blow forced Zalvok to tumble. Before he could rise, a boot pressed firmly into his windpipe. "Pathetic," thundered his father's voice from above. With a disgusted gesture, Exorvok indicated a weapon rack where the Zarketh, a curved blade pulsing with barely contained plasma, awaited. "Finish him." In that moment, amidst the chaos and crashing blows, a messenger in slate-gray Imperial Diplomatic Corps armor knelt at the edge of the pit. The messenger offered a data crystal to Exorvok, a crystal containing news from the Zifari frontier. This interruption rippled through the arena like a shockwave. Taking advantage of the distraction, Zalvok rolled away with desperate cunning. In one swift motion, he scooped a handful of black sand from the ground. As Vethrok lunged once more, Zalvok flung the gritty dust into his eyes and drove his knee upward. The sickening crunch of chitinous plating met Vethrok's howl, a sound echoing with sharp agony. "Enough," boomed Exorvok. He loomed over his fallen son with eyes fixed on the holographic dispatch emanating from the shattered crystal. "The Zifiri matriarch refuses our tribute demands." Again. His tone held a chill that belied the blazing arena. Zalvok spat blood onto the sand. With a barely coherent voice, he murmured, "Let me take the 9th Legion to their homeworld." You'll do nothing." Exorvok's grip tightened around the remnants of the crystal, shattering it with a finality that resonated through the pit. "The Emperor has other plans." His words, clipped and cold, cut the air like a dagger. "The humans in the Soul Cluster grow bolder by the day. We've lost 3 mining outposts to their raids." As the forges continued their ceaseless work in the background and the imperial edifice of might trembled with subtle fissures, Zalvok watched his father's retreating figure, his mind already wrestling with the first hints of an empire destined to crumble. Later that evening, beneath a darkening sky streaked with the dying glow of twin suns, Zalvok and Zetvar found themselves on the observation deck overlooking the sprawling shipyards. Below them, the newest dreadnought in the Imperial fleet, the Worldbreaker, underwent its final armament, its sleek lines illuminated by transient bursts of arc-welding sparks. "Your father expects too much," Zetvar said softly. His tone was laced with empathy and a subtle admonition, a quiet contrast to the relentless thunder of Imperial authority. Zalvok's eyes, still stinging from the earlier duel, betrayed both pain and unspoken anger. "He won every battle at my age. Took 3 systems before his 20th cycle," he replied bitterly, his claws absent-mindedly tracing the fresh sutures along his scarred face. "Different times," Zetvar countered, his gaze turning to a tactical display. He gestured toward the screen where contested borders flickered in red, indications of human incursions that had become more frequent. "Now, the lesser species have united against us." Before Zalvok could forge a proper reply, a chime announced an incoming transmission. The holographic projector flickered to life. His father's stern visage appeared with a single, cold directive: "Report to the Grand Temple at dawn. The Emperor has approved your promotion. The 9th Legion awaits its commander." The transmission ended abruptly. Zetvar clapped Zalvok firmly on the shoulder with mixed pride and concern in his eyes. "It seems you'll have your chance to prove yourself sooner than expected. The 9th is being deployed to the Kelthari worlds." His voice held a pained note, a quiet understanding of the burden now bestowed upon Zalvok. Varkar Prime trembled with the fury of empire. The Kelthari Temple Complex, an architectural marvel dedicated to ancient spiritual rites, now burned against the night sky. Jade-green spires crumbled as incendiary charges detonated inside the sacred halls. Commander Zalvok stood in the command pavilion, his expression as unreadable as the face of fate itself. The campaign had unfolded with ruthless efficiency. The Kelthari people had offered no military resistance, only quiet, proud defiance. Their warriors gathered in silent rows before the temples, a testament to a culture steadfast in its beliefs, even in the face of annihilation by dropships descending from the sky. From the command dais, Zetvar reported, "The temple archives are secured, Commander. The artifacts are being catalogued for transport to Varkar Prime." His armor bore the stains of battle, emerald ichor mixed with the grime of war. Zalvok's eyes, hardened by countless battles, were fixed on the inferno-consuming sacred stone. "Casualties?" he asked, voice heavy with both duty and loss. "Minimal on our side," Zethvar replied. "As for the Kelthari, they refused to evacuate the inner sanctum. The death toll is significant." "They chose their fate," Zalvok said flatly, though his inner turmoil betrayed a growing uncertainty about the cost of conquest. Then came another twist, a discovery that would haunt him for cycles to come. Zethvar continued, "There's something else. We discovered a hidden chamber beneath the temple. We captured several high-value targets, including their spiritual leader." Moments later, a group of Kelthari, delicate and pale with luminous, jade-green scales, were escorted into the pavilion. Among them, one stood out, Kayla, guardian of the Eastern Temple. Dressed in elaborate ceremonial attire, her voice was calm yet resolute as she spoke in flawless Varkari. "I am Kayla, guardian of the Eastern Temple," she said, her tone echoing the ancient wisdom of her people. "Why have you desecrated our sacred places?" "The Kelthari have honored the non-aggression pact for 30 cycles." Zalvok's reply was unyielding. "Your people harbor enemies of the Empire. You've given sanctuary to Zifari refugees and welcomed human diplomats. The penalty for such treason is death." Kayla's serene gaze held neither fear nor malice. "We give sanctuary to all who seek peace. This is our way. As for the humans, they came offering alliance, not conquest. Perhaps there is wisdom in hearing alternatives to endless war." Zalvok, hardened by doctrine yet quietly tormented by guilt, ordered coolly, "Search them. Prepare them for transport to the labor colonies." His words were clinical, but inside him, conflict festered like a hidden wound. Before the Kelthari could be led away, Kayla reached into her silken robes and withdrew a small, polished stone bead on a simple cord. With quiet dignity, she extended it towards him. "If you must take everything from us, take this also," she said. "This relic contains the essence of our philosophy: all life is connected in cycles of giving and receiving. Even enemies are merely friends whose paths have temporarily diverged." Zalvok accepted the bead with a trembling hand. In that simple unadorned object, he felt a warmth that evoked memories of innocence long lost, a secret trophy he would hide from even his father's gaze. Later, in the solitude of his quarters, he examined its faint swirling patterns, feeling an unexpected connection to a world that valued more than the relentless drive to destroy. 5 cycles passed since the Kelthari campaign. In those cycles, border skirmishes and escalating raids had evolved into full-scale war. The human-led coalition, emboldened by unprecedented alliances with various species, had reached the point of direct confrontation, a direct assault on Varkar Prime itself. Amid the chaos, as Varkari warriors fell in the burning ruins of their once great capital, a message rang out through shattered comm channels. "Commander, the Western Quadrant has fallen." Zalvok's voice was strained as he turned toward Zethvar. His armor bore the scars of war, scorched and damaged where once it shone proudly. The imperial sigil, a snarling drake wreathed in flames, hung half-melted from his pauldron. With trembling clarity, Zethvar confirmed the grim news. The world breaker was destroyed with all hands. "Your father, High General Exorvok, died as he lived, in battle. A deep emptiness consumed Zalvok. He had prepared for conquest, for the fulfillment of his father's dreams, but instead, he now faced the bitter reality of loss of his mentor, his guide, and the foundation of an empire he had long upheld without question. Regroup at the spaceport, he barked through pain and smoke, his vocalizer barely functioning. "We'll make our stand, you don't understand," Zethvar interjected, grabbing Zalvok's arm. The fear on his usually stoic face was raw and unfamiliar, a terror of a future where everything might be lost. "The humans aren't slaughtering our wounded. They're helping them." Through the acrid haze, Zalvok saw figures in white and gold armor moving with deliberate purpose amid the ruins. One figure, a human female whose eyes glowed with resolve, knelt beside a young Varkari warrior. Gently, she applied a biofoam graft to his grievous wound, her touch steady and compassionate despite the carnage around them. "Animals," Zalvok spat automatically, bitterness in his tone. But deep inside, he wondered if the term was too crude. What if this was something different? What if mercy could be strength? His hand instinctively reached to the belt, where the Kelthari prayer bead had been hidden away for 5 cycles, carried through every battle and every act of unspeakable cruelty. It was a secret shame and a secret hope, a talisman that reminded him that even in the darkest moments, there could be light. Then, a shadow fell across them. Zalvok whirled, plasma glaive humming to life. But he froze at the sight of a human female standing resolutely before him. Her eyes, dark and determined, mirrored the fires of his dying civilization. "Commander Zalvok," she said calmly, with a Varkari lilt in her human-accented voice. "It's over." In that frozen moment, every instinct screamed to kill her, every conditioned response from years of warfare. But something deep within him, a memory of mercy from a far-off campaign on Tau Ceti III, held him back. "Why?" The single word tore from his throat as if it were both an accusation and a plea. "After all we've done." Her voice was steady, unyielding. "Because someone has to break the cycle." Later, after the ruins had quieted, in the solemn aftermath of destruction and unexpected compassion, Zalvok would learn her name was Captain Elias Carter. He would come to understand that every life, no matter how burdened by battle, deserved a chance to choose a different path. In the weeks that followed, the shattered remnants of the Varkari Empire began to coalesce into a fledgling coalition led by those who still believed in hope rather than endless warfare. The Zifari delegation arrived amid both protest and barely contained fury. Matriarch Vale, her battle-worn carapace still marked by the shock whips of imperial cruelty, surveyed the ravaged throne room with an icy, grinding gaze. "Would you spare them?" she spat at the gathered delegates, a mix of once mighty warlords and defeated subjects. "After what they did to my brood daughters? To the egg chambers of Zyphar Prime?" The memory of her own lost campaign surged unbidden in Zalvok's mind. He recalled the ruthless orders he had given, the bioplagues that had rained down on Zyphar Prime and the cruelty that his empire had once endorsed without question. Yet now, the chamber was a tentative stage for negotiation between enemies and those who had suffered too much. Across the makeshift negotiation table sat Ambassador Kayla, still serene despite her ordeal. Her jade-green scales gleamed softly in the dim light as she addressed both her former captors and the allied human representatives. "And what does more killing solve, matriarch?" Kayla asked coolly. "The humans have shown us another way." A tall human figure, Captain Carter, his armor dented from battle and his expression guarded but resolute, leaned forward. "With respect, matriarch, that's exactly what the Varkari would have done if given the chance." "Is that truly who we want to be?" A heavy silence fell. In that moment, Zalvok's heart, burdened by years of indoctrination and carnage, felt the stirrings of doubt. He recalled Kayla's words from before, the sacred bead, the lesson that all life was intertwined in cycles of both giving and receiving. After a long pause, Matriarch Vale's mandibles clicked with a sound like breaking glass. She turned her gaze to Zalvok, the hatred in her eyes softening unexpectedly into something resembling pity. "You don't deserve this mercy," she murmured, then, as if testing a new possibility, added, "But if the humans are foolish enough to offer it, perhaps there is hope for us all." Later, as the delegates dispersed and the atmosphere grew quiet, Kayla approached Zalvok. Her luminous eyes fell to the prayer bead now hanging openly at his belt. "You kept it," she noted softly, genuine surprise tinting her gentle words. "I don't know why," Zalvok admitted, almost inaudibly. "It felt wrong to destroy it." Kayla's smile was serene and filled with quiet wisdom. "That small choice may have saved your soul." The bead contains no magic, only a reminder that every action has consequences, that every being is connected. In that moment, Zalvok understood that though he had been raised to conquer, he had also been given the chance to transform. And transformation was the first step toward redemption. The tides of war turned swiftly. Escalating conflicts with the human-led coalition and its allied species evolved into a full-scale assault on the heartland of the old empire. Varkar Prime burned like a crucible, its ancient monuments crumbling beneath the weight of retribution and rebirth. "Commander, the Western Quadrant has fallen," came a desperate cry over the communication network as the fortress of the Imperial War College lay in ruins. Zalvok's armor, once a pristine symbol of his lineage, was now a patchwork of scorch marks and hastily mended breaches. The Empire's emblem, a snarling drake engulfed in flame, dangled broken from his pauldron. Zethvar, his voice strained with urgency and disbelief, confirmed the unthinkable news. The World Breaker was destroyed with all hands. Your father, High General Exorvok, perished on the field. In that moment, Zalvok felt an emptiness that was neither relief nor grief. It was the void left behind when a pillar of his life, his father, crumbled to dust. For so long, he had fought in the name of empire, blinded by the belief that conquest was the only path to greatness. Now, as he surveyed the devastation, a seed of self-doubt took root. Amid the shattered remnants of old order, Zethvar's urgent words resonated. "Regroup at the spaceport. We make our stand, you don't understand," Zethvar whispered fiercely, grabbing Zalvok's arm as if to anchor him to a new reality. His eyes, rarely betraying emotion, now shone with raw fear and uncertainty. "The humans aren't just killing, they're helping our wounded. Look." Through thick plumes of smoke, Zalvok saw humans in white and gold armor, laboring with careful, deliberate compassion amid the ruins. One human medic knelt beside a wounded Varkari warrior, tending to his wound with precision and care that transcended the brutality of war. The sight hammered at everything Zalvok had been taught: mercy was not weakness. Instinctively, his hand reached to the hidden compartment of his belt where the sacred prayer bead resided. It had traveled with him through countless battles, the bearer of a secret hope. Now, as he stared at the human medic, those ingrained instincts of violence hesitated. What if the cycle of bloodshed could finally be broken? A shadow swept over them, and Zalvok whirled around, plasma glaive primed. But he froze at the sight of a human female standing resolutely before him. Her dark eyes, filled with quiet determination, met his own. "Commander Zalvok," she said calmly, her accent a gentle blend of human pragmatism and the mellifluous intonations of Varkari speech. "It's over." Every fiber of his militant training rebelled at the thought, yet an inexplicable force held him back, the echo of mercy from that long-ago mission on Tau Ceti III. The question burst forth from him, raw and desperate: why? After all we've done? Her reply was measured, dignified, and laden with sorrow. Because someone has to break the cycle. Someone must show that there is another way. Later, in the calm that followed the battle, Zalvok learned her name was Captain Elias Carter. Over shared meals and quiet discussions amid the rubble, they debated the nature of power, mercy, and responsibility. Elias recounted how, on Tau Ceti III, he'd witnessed a Varkari officer, one who bore an uncanny resemblance to Zalvok in temperament, order medical aid for wounded colonists, an act of kindness that defied the brutal expectations of war. "Why you?" Zalvok would ask in moments of introspection. Why spare the commander of the 9th Legion, if not for something deeper? Elias would only smile sadly. Because even the darkest hearts can harbor sparks of light. And sometimes, in the midst of relentless carnage, one small act of mercy can change the course of history. For the first time in his life, Zalvok began to question the righteousness of the imperial creed. The battles were no longer just about conquest, they were about what kind of being he would choose to become. As the human-led coalition and its allied species began to rebuild, a new political order took shape amid the ashes of the fallen empire. The Zifiri delegation, led by the resolute matriarch Vale, entered the ruined throne room in a storm of protest and barely contained fury. Her eyes flashed with the cold determination of one who had suffered unspeakable cruelty, yet behind that hardened exterior lay a yearning for justice, and perhaps, for healing. "I cannot fathom a future in which you spare them." Matriarch Vale roared, her voice echoing off crumbling stone. "After what your forces did to my brood daughters, to our sacred egg chambers," across the negotiation table, Ambassador Kayla of the Kelthari, who had survived the destruction of her temple, sat with a serenity that belied the turmoil of her past. Zalvok watched as the delegates argued over the fate of the conquered and the conquerors alike. In the midst of this, Captain Carter and a cadre of human representatives interjected with proposals based on alliance and reconstruction rather than retribution. Kayla then spoke, her voice soft but unyielding: "The humans have shown us another way, not through endless war, but through rebuilding, through understanding. They have chosen to build what was destroyed rather than burn what remains." Zalvok's heart pounded as he listened. Memories of the Kelthari prayer bead, its smooth, warm surface in his hand, reminded him of the lessons he had so long refused to acknowledge. The bead, a silent witness to cycles of take and give, now shone as a symbol of hope, not mere conquest. As the meeting drew to a close, Kayla approached him. "You kept the bead," she noted softly, as if reading a secret truth in his eyes. I did not know what else to do," Zalvok confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was as if it reminded me that every act of taking must be balanced by giving." Kayla smiled kindly. "That small, almost insignificant choice might have saved your soul. It is a reminder that all beings, even in this endless cycle of war, are connected. And the path to reconciliation is built one humble act at a time." That night, as Zalvok lay awake in his quarters, a modest room now stripped of the grandeur of imperial ornamentation, he wrestled with conflicting memories. His father's ruthless legacy and the recent revelations of mercy mingled uncomfortably. The empire he once served was crumbling, but from its ashes, something profound and uncertain was emerging. 1 year after the fall of Varkar Prime, a transformed world now took shape. Zalvok, once the fearsome commander of the 9th Legion, stood on the newly constructed observation platform overlooking what had once been the Imperial Plaza. In place of the towering statues of conquering generals stood a humble memorial garden, where flora from 100 worlds intermingled in vibrant harmony. At his side stood Zethvar, who had made a remarkable transition from military second to a trusted civilian administrator, a living reminder that change was possible even for those forged in battle. Together, they watched children, human, Varkari, Zifari, and Kelthari, play among the garden paths. Their laughter broke the somber silence that once reigned over the Empire's remnants. "Would you have believed this possible?" Zethvar asked, gesturing to the colorful scene below with a mixture of wonder and relief. Zalvok's gaze softened as he absently touched the prayer bead around his neck. "No," he admitted. "I was too blinded by imperial doctrine, by the endless pursuit of power, to see alternatives. And now?" Zethvar pressed gently, as if knowing the answer lay within Zalvok's own quiet revelations. "Now I understand what Kayla meant about cycles," Zalvok said, his voice laced with the hard-won wisdom of regret and rebirth. "The Empire took and took until there was nothing left to give. But this," he gestured toward the rebuilding efforts, the cooperative endeavors between once enemies, "is about giving back. It is the start of a true reconciliation." In the distance, where once stood the imposing Imperial War College, a new edifice had risen, the Temple of Reconciliation. Designed by Kelthari architects but built by workers and artisans from every race and species, the temple was a testament to a future founded on unity. Its intricate spires reached upward, framing the twin setting suns in a promise of peace. "Captain Carter has recommended you for the diplomatic corps," Zethvar said, his tone reflecting hope for the future. "They believe that your extensive knowledge of Varkari outer territories and your experiences in war would guide our efforts to heal the wounds of the past." Zalvok shook his head in quiet disbelief. "They trust me to build something new from the ashes of my former life. I still struggle with the memories of my actions, the cruelty I once wrought." A gentle voice, warm with shared understanding, cut through his thoughts. It was Elias Carter. Approaching with a measured step, Carter extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement and fellowship. After a long pause, Zalvok took it with care, a symbolic crossing of the old and the new. "Trust is earned, Zalvok," Carter said softly. "And you've been earning it, one day at a time. Now, let us build a future where the cycle of conquest is replaced by the cycle of compassion." Kayla, standing nearby, added, "The cycle continues, Commander. Once, you took from us. Now, you give back. That is the way of balance." As the three stood together, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Zalvok felt a semblance of true peace, a peace that came not from the absence of war, but from the promise of a reconciled future. Even as the coalition forged forward, new challenges emerged from the depths of old conflicts. Rumors of a hidden faction within the remnants of the Empire, the Shapers, began to circulate. These renegades, a secretive collective of scientists and disillusioned warriors, believed that the power of the fallen empire should not be discarded but harnessed, remolded into a new cosmic order. They saw the cycle of destruction not as an aberration to be cured but as the natural order of the universe, a force that, if controlled, could forge a new destiny. Late at night, in a clandestine meeting room deep beneath the Temple of Reconciliation, Zalvok met with shadowy figures whose faces were hidden in the gloom. One of them, a former Imperial tactician with cold, calculating eyes, spoke in hushed tones. "We must not let the cycle end," the tactician declared. "The Shapers believe that with the knowledge of our ancient might, we can harness the chaos to create a new era. An era where our legacy is not one of endless destruction, but of controlled evolution." Zalvok listened in silence, his heart conflicted. The violent victories and conquests of his past clashed with the gentle voices of mercy he had come to know. "And what would that demand?" he asked quietly. "Total dominion," the tactician replied, his tone bordering on fervor. "The careful use of power to guide, to shape the future. We control the cycle, and in doing so, we control destiny." For a long, painful moment, Zalvok considered the allure of that vision, a chance to reclaim lost power and to rule rather than reconcile. But then, amidst the fervor, he recalled the countless lives shattered in the name of conquest. His gaze fell to the hidden prayer bead, still warm against his skin, a silent testament to the alternative path of compassion. "No," he finally murmured. "The cycle of blood will only breed more blood. We have a chance to break free of that legacy. I choose to build, not to control." The meeting dissolved into murmurs and furtive glances. Zalvok walked away with his resolve forged anew. The seeds of rebellion had been sown, but his heart was set on reconciliation, a hard, uncertain path that promised healing more than dominion. Haunted by memories of past campaigns, Zalvok often revisited the darker hours of his life in quiet moments. Late at night, when the noise of rebuilding had quieted down and the only sound was the gentle hum of the restored shipyards, he would wander the abandoned corridors of his former command center. There, among relics of imperial triumph and ruin, his thoughts would return to the Kelthari temple destruction, the bioplagues, the calculated cruelty, and the look of profound loss in Kayla's eyes. In these moments, dialogue with his inner self unfolded like a private conversation between his past and his emerging self. "Why did I choose this path?" he would ask the silence. Was it honor? Duty? Or simply the unyielding force of legacy? The memory of his father's booming orders, the weight of Exorvok's expectations, and the countless bodies lost in the name of empire converged within him. And then, in those dark hours, the subtle lessons of compassion whispered back. He recalled a particular battle, a turning point on Tau Ceti III, when, amid the chaos of retreat, he had ordered medical attention for wounded civilians. It was a small act, one that his ruthless commanders would have scorned, but it spoke to a hidden part of him that longed to nurture rather than destroy. That memory, once buried beneath layers of martial discipline, now ignited a transformative spark. He began to see the empire for what it truly was, a cycle of taking without giving, of power without balance. And in that realization lay the potential for change. The prayer bead became a symbol in his mind, and talisman of hope and a promise that every warrior had a choice between tyranny and mercy. As the provisional government consolidated power, the emerging coalition set its sights on rebuilding and diplomacy. Yet, old enemies and internal divisions still threatened the fragile peace. With representatives from humans, Varkari, Zifari, Kelthari, and even some defectors from the former imperial lines gathered in a grand hall within the Temple of Reconciliation, a momentous decision was made. Commander Zalvok was nominated to lead a new diplomatic corps tasked with negotiating the repatriation of displaced peoples, the restoration of ancient cultural artifacts, and the forging of lasting alliances with neighboring systems once at war with the old empire. Before an assembly of representatives, Zalvok stood at a raised dais. The hall was filled with tension and cautious hope. He cleared his throat, and his voice, once deep and commanding with the tone of a conqueror, now resonated with measured resolve and a hint of humility. "My fellow beings," he began, eyes sweeping over the diverse crowd, "we stand at a crossroads. The cycle of war that has defined our past need not dictate our future. Today, I choose to build, to nurture, and to honor every life that has suffered the cruelty of unending conquest. Together, we have the chance to create a new legacy, one of reconciliation, unity, and hope." His words were met with murmurs and cautious applause. Even Matriarch Vale, whose earlier fury had softened, inclined her head in acknowledgement. Ambassador Kayla's eyes shone with a quiet pride, and Captain Carter offered a respectful nod. In that moment, Zalvok knew that the future, though uncertain, held the promise of redemption. Later, in a private conference with Captain Carter and Zethvar, he discussed the new mission in detail. "I have been assigned to lead the diplomatic corps," Zalvok said, still grappling with the weight of his past. "We need to reach out to those whom we once conquered, restore what was lost, and pave a new way forward. But I fear the scars of our old ways run deep." Captain Carter, her voice laced with empathy yet firm resolve, reassured him, "Your actions on Tau Ceti III showed us that even a hardened warrior can choose mercy. You have earned the trust of many, Zalvok. Let that trust be the foundation of our future." Zethvar added quietly, "The coalition stands with you. Rebuilding is a long, difficult journey. We must be prepared for betrayal and for old wounds to reopen. But together, we can forge a peace that transcends the legacy of destruction." For the first time in a long cycle, Zalvok allowed himself to hope. Years passed, and what was once an empire built on conquest slowly gave way to a realm of reconciliation and rebuilding. The once dreaded battlegrounds of Varkar Prime were transformed into havens of cooperation. Statues commemorating brutal victories were replaced by memorials celebrating lives saved and bridges built between former enemies. Zalvok, now a prominent member of the diplomatic corps and an ambassador for reconciliation, walked through the lush memorial garden that had sprung up in place of the imperial plaza. At his side, Zethvar, wiser and more seasoned by peace than war, quietly observed the laughter of multi-species children playing among flowering paths that wound through interstellar flora. Captain Carter and Ambassador Kayla joined him on a crisp, clear evening as the twin suns set, bathing the rebuilt city in warm amber and gentle crimson hues. The Temple of Reconciliation, resplendent in its harmonious design, a blend of Kelthari artistry and human engineering, rose in the background as a symbol of what could be achieved when old hatreds were set aside in favor of unity. "You truly have changed, Zalvok," Kayla said softly, her luminous eyes reflecting both pride and sadness. "Once, you were the Empire's iron fist, and now you are its healing balm." Zalvok's gaze drifted to the sacred prayer bead at his belt, a simple, polished stone that had silently borne witness to countless battles and his personal journey from destruction to creation. "I know I cannot undo what has been done," he said quietly. "But if each act of mercy can sow a seed of hope, then perhaps we can grow a future worth living." Captain Carter extended her hand, a gesture rich with the human tradition of friendship, and Zalvok grasped it firmly. "Let our shared vision guide us," Carter declared. "Let us be the ones who break the cycle and build instead of burn." Zethvar, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the storms of war he had once commanded, added, "The true measure of a leader is not in the battles they win, but in the lives they save and the futures they shape. Today, we forge a new path, a path of reconciliation that honors the sacrifices of our past while lighting the way for tomorrow." As the new era dawned over Varkar Prime, a world scarred by war yet reborn in hope, Zalvok felt the quiet peace that came from a hard-won choice. The Empire, once destined to fall into the abyss of oblivion, now had the chance to rise as a symbol of unity and renewal. In the distance, the great orbital forges continued their work, not as instruments of conquest but as beacons of progress, crafting tools for rebuilding rather than weapons of war. The galaxy, ever vast and mysterious, now held voices of compassion among its stars, voices determined to break the cycle of destruction and foster a future where every being was valued. And so, beneath the gentle glow of twin suns and amidst the harmonized chorus of a multitude of species, the cycle was redefined. What had once been an era of empire and endless war slowly gave way to a new chapter, a chapter of rebuilding, understanding, and the quiet, enduring promise of peace.